So we all know about the story surrounding the lithium sector. We've seen prices soaring, up by over 500%. There's significant demand with the electric vehicle revolution arriving. But the question many investors have is, what actually is lithium? What are the different extraction methods? And then of course, most importantly, how is it going to feed into this EV revolution? If you're wondering why we're filming from here, we're currently set up in the Amalfi Coast, a wonderful picturesque area in the south of Italy. But there's one winding road that goes all the way along the coast, and there are so many cars there. A lot of them are electric vehicles. And as I was watching the electric vehicles, thinking to myself, lithium itself, we know that there's significant demand drivers for it, but how well understood is it? So I thought today would be the perfect time for us to dive in and really unpack the lithium sector, as well as the resource itself. So first up, what is lithium? Lithium is actually the 33rd most abundant element. It's a fascinating one because we've all seen and talked about the scarcity of lithium at the moment, how there's limited lithium supplies, perpetual lithium supply deficits that we may be entering into. Though of course there is contrasting views. We also saw the Goldman Sachs report as well. Where it will end up landing on the supply and demand dynamic is another question for a different video. But we all do know that there's going to be significant increases in demand for lithium. What we do have an understanding of is it takes a long time for projects to come online. It's not as easy as just extracting a raw material. But when you're going down all the way through to battery grade chemicals, there's a significant process, and developing out these supply chains takes time. So lithium actually, under standard conditions, is the lightest and least dense element. This of course is necessary and very useful for areas such as portable electronics, but of course now, for the electric vehicle transition. With its lightness, it's fantastic and well suited for the mobility sector, and this is really where a lot of the attention surrounds the lithium ion battery. At this stage, we haven't got any alternatives at a commercial scale yet for lithium ion batteries. This is why there's such a focus. The vast majority of electric vehicles are using lithium ion batteries, and that's why demand for this area is continuing to rise, particularly as we see government mandates coming through. We saw corporate investment, initially obviously driven and pioneered by Tesla, but continuing to roll out across the manufacturers, and this has led us to today. So lithium is actually preferred in batteries because of its durability and its performance. But you might be wondering, lithium, how do we get our hands on it? And how do we actually extract it in its current form? So at this stage, there's two conventional methods of lithium extraction. One is through lithium brine extraction, and on the other side is hard rock extraction. So first and foremost, on the lithium brine extraction side, this is when we're extracting from salt-rich brines. Predominantly focused, there's significant concentrations in the lithium triangle in South America, but there are different brine locations around the world. Essentially, there are these lithium-rich brines which are pumped to the surface, then evaporated over a period of months, and then through a process of evaporation and chemical recovery, we're then left with the lithium itself. While on the other side, we have hard rock spodumene extraction. This is much more of a conventional or traditional mining process, though of course going all the way through to downstream takes a lot more time. Interestingly, Australia is actually one of the leading spodumene producers. However, the majority of it is shipped offshore to China and other nations around the world to process and refine downstream into battery grade chemicals. So you might be wondering, what are these chemicals that go downstream? So if you want battery grade chemicals, you can't just get the brine, or you can't just have the spodumene and put it straight into a battery. It's got to be refined, and this is refined predominantly into two different sides. There's lithium hydroxide and lithium carbonate. It's worth noting that the brines that we talked about earlier, they can only initially be transformed into carbonate. There is an additional step that can then transform this into hydroxide, but obviously it's an additional step which comes with an additional cost. While spodumene or hard rock extraction is more flexible. So this can either be processed downstream into a lithium hydroxide or into a lithium carbonate. And so even just wrapping your head around these different components of the upstream production and extraction is enough. There are actually a number of different aspirant technologies as well that are being considered. It's worth noting that none of these have yet reached commercial scale. You might have heard of direct lithium extraction. There's a couple of different companies vying for that on the ASX, including Vulcan Energy Resources, as well as Lake Resources. This has some environmental benefits, particularly because of the significant water usage that goes through the evaporation ponds through lithium brines. And then on the other side as well, there's clay extraction. These are just two of the more prominent ones that have got some investment and some research going into it at the moment from a number of different companies. But over time, obviously with a significant demand for lithium going into the lithium ion batteries, we're seeing a lot of investment, a lot of mines and a lot of capabilities going into this space. So it'll be fascinating to see not only how battery chemistries evolve, but also on the other side as well, how extraction methods continue to develop. It's a fascinating discussion. There's so many different components to talk about. It will continue to evolve. We know this electric vehicle transition is only just in its early stages. Before we talk about the supply and demand drivers, we've just launched a second channel. We've got 2 channels now. For Investors is live, so make sure you subscribe and turn your bell notifications on. You won't miss any of the episodes across both channels. And let us know your thoughts on lithium itself and the broader transition trend too. Drop in a comment below. But when we're thinking about it, we know there's significant demand drivers for the electric vehicle revolution, but why there's such attention on lithium is the other areas of the supply chain on the battery side, developing gigafactories, takes a far quicker time than it does to actually set up total production from discovery all the way through to production of lithium mines. And so as a result of that, with a significant government investment, with the ESG trend and the mandates coming in now for decarbonisation, there are so many gigafactories coming online. There are so many different competing pressures in the macroeconomic environment, from inflationary pressures, labour shortages, supply chain concerns. However, the one thing that continues to remain true is the fact that manufacturers need to get their hands on lithium, and the electric revolution is only just starting to pick up pace. There's significant focus on decarbonisation. There are so many EV manufacturers that are just starting to dip their toe in, and we can see it's going to exponentially grow over this next decade and beyond. Elon Musk has stated that it looks like a license to print money in the lithium processing space. There's so many eyes continuing to grow into the space, so it's going to be fascinating to see how things evolve from here. A big thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this video. For now, stay well and happy investing.